The one that you and will be participating in a. Okay, let me do this one more time. I got you. Okay.
You want me? You want to just kind of start it up again, just so we have the flow?
Yeah, lead me into it again.
All right, cool. All right, and I'm gonna throw it over you. How do I fuck up one sentence?
I'm spreading the disease.
It's like a flu. All right, you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another great episode of StreetPX. It's our little adventure in studying and sharing fascinating stories with photographers of the, human condition. My name is Casper.
And he's accompanied by Jim Watkins. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's November 3rd, and you're listening to episode number 51. On today's show, we're sitting down with Chase Stevens. He's a Las Vegas photojournalist. I'm actually staff for the Las Vegas Review Journal, and he's got some stories to share. But before we get into it, though, we do want to check out what's happening out there and just some creative plugs. First one is a shout-out to a friend of the show, Michelle Grosskopf. Her first project just released today. She's running a Kickstarter for Sentimental. This is our first monograph. It's a collection of street images over the last 5 years, all of her best work. We'll drop the link in, as with anything, in the show notes, and head on over there and get yourself a book, or at least pre-order a book. Next one, Jim, go for it.
And I want to mention there's an exhibition going on November 10th from 6 to 10 o'clock at the Great Highway Gallery here in San Francisco. A friend of ours, Joe Aguirre, along with another great photographer, Jake Ricker, will be featuring some photographs from the NorCal fires, that disaster that happened up north of here of San Francisco.
Yes.
And so I cannot wait to see what they came up with because it was very tragic what happened up there, and I'm sure they came up with some poignant stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yep, and just as an aside with that one, all proceeds will be going to charity to benefit the victims.
Yeah.
So by attending, if you want to buy a print or any donations that you give, all that's going to be going into kind of that same bucket to help.
So if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, go support Joe and Jake and check out that exhibit.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we can't do an opening without showing some love for our sponsor, Glass Key Photo. That's San Francisco's premier place for all things analog. You need your film camera repaired, you need new film camera, need some film expired and new. That's the place to go. Best thing is, if you are in the Bay Area, they do have a grand reopening on November 16th. That's located at 1230 Sutter Street there in San Francisco. It's a luau party too, so you're going to have to get your Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, what's going on over there with Matt and Gordon, man?
I know. They're getting all festive and tropical, but I'm going to have to get my Tommy Bahama out of the closet.
Yeah, can't wait to see that.
Right. So they're also going to be doing an auction on prints and so forth, and that too is going to be benefiting the victims of the NorCal fire. So
wow.
two possible places to go to help, to actually help instead of those thoughts and prayers thing.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, man.
So much love to Glass Key Photo for helping us out, and definitely go over and check it out because we will be there, and come say hi. Additionally, StreetPX Secret Print Exchange. We want to keep on harping on this because we want you to participate. We have the entire month of November here that the registrations will be open, and together let's share the gift of photography this holiday by sending prints all around the world. So go over to streetpx.com to sign up. You'll see a nice little link top right of the corner. It's free. Well, postage, of course, and whatever you do to print. But I know last year we had a really great turnout, and people were even sending zines around, which is really fantastic. So we would love to see that again. We already have a great lineup, and we want to see more names on that list.
That's right. Sign up, people.
Yes. Beyond that, merch store, go get t-shirts, camera designs, that fun stuff. Patreon.com/StreetPX. Help us keep this flowing. Yada, yada, yada. I just want to get into this show. How about you?
Yes, do it, man. Let's do it.
On today's episode, we are featuring Chase Stevens. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
All right. Welcome to the show, Chase.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, definitely glad to have you on and just kind of get this ball rolling. So you're a photojournalist there in Las Vegas, right?
Yep. I work for the Las Vegas Review Journal. I started out as a freelancer back in 2012, and I also got an internship a little bit after that, and then I was eventually hired as part of the staff back in 2014. So 5 years total.
So you were still in school during the intern thing, or did you take kind of the non-traditional approach?
No, yeah, I went to UNLV, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I actually have a psychology degree. But during that, I got a camera for fun off Craigslist and got really obsessed with it and just taught myself. And then I ended up at the school newspaper, and everything sort of snowballed from there. It was...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. None of this was planned.
Talk about a late bloomer.
Yeah.
Do you ever use that psychology when you're out there shooting?
A little bit, I guess. It helps you keep in check.
Yeah, I bet you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can definitely see it benefiting being a journalist, being able to approach things on a unilateral way, or being aware of people's responses.
Yeah, exactly. I think if anything, it definitely did come into play that night, and sort of understanding the way people are responding to things and understanding the way you're responding to it, I guess, or, I guess it helps in some subliminal way, definitely.
Yeah.
Subconscious awareness.
Yeah.
Say, Chase, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background first before we go too far down? Because you're originally a Californian, is that right?
Yeah. So I was born in California. My dad is a chef, so we bounced around a little bit. I did actually live in Vegas when I was like a young kid, early 90s. Okay. But then we went back to California, more like Orange County area, and when I was like 14, I moved out to Chicago, and I was there for a few years, went to high school, and then ended up in Vegas for my last year of high school, and that's sort of why I ended up going to UNLV, because, here's a cheap, affordable place, and at the time, psychology, it was totally something I was planning to hopefully make a career out of and go to grad school and all that. So I was like, well, it doesn't really matter where I go. Uh-huh. And then in the very beginning of 2011, I was browsing Craigslist. I had a friend who had like a Canon Rebel XS, and I found one for like $235, and I'm like, I can afford this. I was working retail on the Strip at the time at Swatch. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes.
At the Caesars Forum shops. I was doing that just to help pay the bills and stuff, and I got that camera, and it was just like immediately obsessive, going out every single day to take pictures and like figuring out what the fuck RAW is and how you use manual. It took a little while, but pretty soon I started taking it to concerts and stuff like that, and going to shows where they would let me in, which is like, there's this little taco shop called Yayo Taco across from UNLV, and there were a lot of like local shows there, and the light was shit, so I decided to like get a flash and try and learn how to bounce it off the ceiling and stuff like that. So yeah, really early on I was just shooting anything and everything. And
with a Rebel to boot.
Yeah. I got really into it, and I think I upgraded to like a 40D and then a 50D within a few months, because that wasn't really
It's a good starter camera. I started on the, T2i, I think it was.
Yeah. No, it definitely was, and it was just so great to be able to like, open images right away in your laptop and edit, And around, let's see, once it was summer break for school, I finally got to go back to Chicago, and that's really, I think, the place that sparked my interest in street photography for the first time, like that, and then LA, because my mom lived in LA, and then I still had family in Chicago, so I'd visit both when I could, and that was the most inspiring stuff, to just go around the city streets and take pictures of people and the shadows and architecture. I mean, I really miss it there, both places.
Yeah, that we were talking beforehand. That's where I first met Chase, in Chicago, when he was in his nascent years of street photography. We were there.
Yeah, you saw the beginning.
Yeah, I saw the beginning. Yeah,
and you take a look at his portfolio, and much congratulations, man. That's a lot accomplished in a very short amount of time.
Thank you. It's surreal, really. I mean, it was just something for fun, And then it's like, oh wait, people could pay me to do this. And then it just kept going and going and going.
But
and
you said you started with the UNLV school newspaper? Yeah,
it was called the Rebel Yell at the time, and they recently changed it to the Scarlet Engrave Free Press. But that got me, the very first time, I think it was when all the Occupy Wall Street stuff was going on.
Yeah.
And there was a big march down the strip, and I just went and shot that. And I was trying to photograph what I could and just send it to them and hope that they would use it. And
Please take it.
Yeah, exactly. And then they ran something on their front page and was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then a little after that, they actually started sending me assignments, and it sort of just spiraled from there.
Wow. You got your first injection, and they were like, we'll give you this hit for free.
Yeah, and then the addiction starts.
Did you get paid for that first gig? The first one you sent in?
Yeah, we got paid $10 a photo, which,
woo!
I mean, it was something. I got paid like $9 an hour at Swatch, so I was like, all right, if I could get paid an hour worth for a photo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, what happened is, so I'm a big music fan, and I also got into shooting concerts early on as well. Started with local shows. My first photo pass was to shoot DRI, this like punk band at this like small bar.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and then
bar lighting.
Yeah, it was rough, and there was no like barricade, so I was just up at the front like getting crushed by all these people moshing, like trying to take the picture. That was a little painful, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
And
we suffer for our art, man, I tell you.
So there was some like hard rock music festival a couple months in. This is like late 2011, and they sent me to go shoot it and got me credentialed. And then they ran like 25 of my photos without thinking, and so I got $250 like early in. And that was like the most I got paid for anything for quite a long time,
Yeah.
a good half year maybe or more.
Yeah.
But that was a nice surprise.
And you were still freelancing at that time, huh?
Yeah, I mean, really, I was mostly just shooting for the school paper, and then early 2012, I started shooting a little bit of weddings because that's something that paid more. That's something that was more stable. So I think my first like editorial assignment after the school paper was there's a magazine out here monthly called Desert Companion, which is like affiliated with our local NPR station, and I was trying to reach out to people to see where I could get, and I got assigned to do a portrait of like a local author who had just had a book come out, and the rate was it was pretty good, and that was the first. I think that was like January or February 2012.
Portrait rates are usually pretty good depending on where you are.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad, and that's so it was around then, early 2012. I think like April's when I quit retail. I was like, okay, I think I can make the jump.
Oh, that's a heart-stopping moment.
Yeah, I mean, I was a student, so I was only working part-time really, and so I only needed photography to cover me like the equivalent of what a part-time job would be, and getting 200, 250 for a good assignment is what I would make, in a week or more at Swatch. So it was pretty incredible. It was really surreal.
Yeah. And it's just trying to get those next contracts and kind of building onto it.
Yeah, and so I just made more calls, and then finally the RJ called me back, which almost surprised me at the time. I was just trying, and but it didn't occur to me how few photojournalists there were in Las Vegas, and that still is the case.
Is that right?
So I went in April 2012. I went in for an interview. They got me set up, but then I had to wait a couple months because like the lawyer had to look over the freelance contracts, and so I finally started shooting the very beginning of June that year, and from then I was basically working at least 3, 4, 5 times a week for them, and it never stopped.
So they were just calling you, sending you on assignment? Were you just getting texts, or how did that play out? How would you kind of describe that?
Yeah, in the beginning they gave me some simple ones. They have like community editions called View. So usually they start out freelancers with these View assignments because they're simple. They're not like things on quick deadlines, dailies. Right. We usually call them. And so I would usually get a text, that evening. Hey, are you available the next day, or what is your availability like? And then usually we'd get like 2 assignments usually for a day rate, and it wasn't a whole lot, but it was pretty good for me considering. And
kind of like the cat shows and things.
Yeah, a little bit like that. I mean,
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Well, sometimes. But I mean, pretty quickly, I was getting work up to 5 times a week, and it was like, wow.
Nice.
At the time they relied on freelancers a lot, despite having maybe like 4 or 5 staff photographers. So I'm like, well, even if I don't ever get hired, I can at least keep freelancing through college or something. At that time, I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to make a career out of it. I mean, think of it too. This is like 2012 when the newspaper industry is just crashing down.
Right,
I mean, you just hear of layoffs. I remember the Chicago Sun-Times layoffs.
Yeah,
I think that might have been 2012, maybe 2013, but that was brutal. They cut a photo staff of like 26, like including editors and whatnot. But that's staggering. That's scary.
Thank you for saying that. What you just said there is photo editors as well, because that's a very important aspect of the removal that a lot of people don't think about.
It really is. I mean, and at certain publications like Time, photo editors are the only staff they have. They don't have staff photographers anymore. They contract people out still. But you still need people to make the editorial decision to choose the right images.
That's right.
And do you guys remember the Stanley Cup photo on the Chicago Sun-Times?
Yes.
Oh, Tribune?
Yes. That's classic, man.
That's embarrassing. That was atrocious.
Sure was.
It was a legendary failure.
Classic ineptitude, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a sad day.
Yeah,
and worse yet, it was also and that wasn't the worst of it. I actually looked to the Sun-Times as kind of like my standard for what fucked up photojournalism decisions look like, because subsequently, remember the Cubs championship?
Yeah,
all back.
Oh yeah,
it was just the back of all of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I remember that. That was just a year ago when they made. That was bad too. Yeah, and it's like you still don't have photo editors even. Obviously.
And it was made that much worse because you had the counter to it was Chicago Tribune still had their staff and their editors.
And they had 3 or 4 people there, right? And it was an away game?
Yeah. It was just night and day.
It's incredible.
Yeah. But that is the time that you came in, so I'm sure that was kind of like ever present on your mind as you're moving into the industry.
Yeah, it really was. But I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take this as far as it'll go. And so towards the end of the year 2012, that's when I finally I landed an internship. A spot opened, and it was paid. It was 40 hours a week, and so that's where really just got into the day-to-day stuff and getting to do more into sports. We got the Runnin' Rebels at UNLV, so that was pretty good at the time. Our football team might have sucked, but there's at least one good aspect.
Well, you got a decent sports team coming in here soon.
Yeah, I know. And hey, the Golden Knights, their first 2 regular season games, we've somehow won. So
nice.
The first home regular season game is tomorrow.
Is that the new NHL team?
The Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's nice to have here.
And we were talking before the show. It's surprising it took this long for Vegas to kind of come back to the professional sports circuit.
Yeah, it really is. We get some action with like the NBA Summer League, and then we have some big boxing matches in UFC. But we've always felt like a major league sports town. At least I've been here since 2009, and at least since then, it's really grown, and it's such an international city, and it's surprising that it didn't have it, because people will travel here from all over the world, and people will come here for a vacation in the game. Like, it makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've noticed that you've come to Alameda once or twice at least to do some shooting the training.
Yeah, that was pretty nice, So backing up a little bit, a year and a half ago, we were bought by a billionaire, Sheldon Adelson. He owns the Venetian, and he bought the RJ, and we even had to uncover who the owner was because it was a mystery.
I remember that.
I'm trying to shut my mouth right now.
Yeah, I remember.
It was surreal for everyone involved, and
I bet the mood and the atmosphere surely shifted.
Indeed. But the one upside of it all is that we had a budget for things. And so we were getting sent around a lot last year, and then a little bit this year. But yeah, for Raiders, they went all in on coverage, and I got to come out in June for one of the mandatory mini camps. So, and I decided to come out early for the San Francisco Street Photography Festival because
that's right. Yeah,
I'd only been I'd been to the Bay Area twice before, but I never had a whole lot of time there. But I absolutely love shooting street there. Like, my very first day I got to do that, I walked around 14 miles. I didn't even realize how.
You two are crazy, man.
A lot of photos.
Walking that you do, man. I tell you.
Hey, 14 miles is just when you're in the zone.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. And the weather, too. It's just nice to wear a jacket and not sweat walking around in 115.
Yeah.
So it was so great to be back. And, I got to, come out like 4 days early and then go out and go to the Oakland Raiders headquarters and shoot some stuff. Get the guys, just in training action. It in of itself, it's not that exciting. You shoot a 15-minute warm-up and then a 15-minute, some drills. But it's really cool to see, Marshawn Lynch up close. At Derek Carr, I was actually, when Derek Carr walked over to do the press conference, I was shooting him walking up. And I was the only photographer doing that. Everyone was just sitting and waiting. And he actually, posed for me all of a sudden. And I was like, all right, that's cool. He's a really funny, genuine guy. And it's really weird to be, that up close. And, here they are reacting to you. It's like, well, all right.
Man, what a thrill, man, I tell you.
Yeah. It is kind of neat putting a personal, not necessarily a personal relationship with them, but just an acquaintance with these people that it seems so much bigger than life, and physically too.
Yeah. And it shows that if a newspaper is sending their people somewhere, they might get something more than what they get, from a wire service. They get a more personalized touch.
Which is actually, that's what was going through my head when I saw those images. It seemed like it was an opportunity for you to get to meet the people and kind of be a precursor to when they eventually arrive.
Yeah, and it really is. Though, sadly, they made the decision to not send us to games, but they send not still photographers, but we send a videographer, Heidi, and she gets to develop that, and she's great at it. And then we also have a columnist visit. We even have an NFL beat writer based in Oakland as well, Michael. And
really?
So there's still a great team, but it definitely does suck not having, a still photographer dedicated for that. But
yeah,
it's still hard to complain with what I did get to do,
That's true. That's true.
How big is your team with the paper there?
Our photo department?
Yeah.
Let's see. I think we have a dozen people.
Nice.
Including editors. We have 3 editors, and we have 3 dedicated videographers. But and then the 5 or 6 photographers, all of who have to be able to do, video as well. We don't. Sometimes it varies on how much we do. Some people do more, some people do less, but we all have to pitch in on that too. That's sort of one of the 21st century industry norms.
Right.
I don't have to as much, but every now and then.
So you're saying, as far as kind of new aspiring photojournalists out there, it's just something to keep in their mind is, catch up on video.
It's almost it's a 90% of jobs probably hiring photojournalists requires some video. So, and it's cool to learn that experience, and it's sort of fascinating how capable DSLRs are at video. I mean, people have made movies with just a 5D Mark II or 3, and using those full frame bodies. So it is cool, but it's a very different beast. And the problem is when newspapers send one photographer to do stills and do video. And you're just never going to get as good of a product. One will suffer.
How are you doing that?
Will.
Yeah. I'm just curious, how do you approach that type of situation, being kind of a one-man army with that?
So usually when they send us to do it just as one person, hopefully it's something where there's more time to shoot B-roll, to do a stand-up interview. Because when it's not is when it gets really difficult, So I had an assignment last year where I had to go cover the opening of the MGM National Harbor outside of DC. And since for that, they're only going to send one reporter and one person to do both. But there was a lot of press conference stuff. There was a lot of time to work around the scene, and I had to do 2 tours through it instead of 1. But it takes extra time, but it's doable when it's a situation like that. Mm-hmm. But and a lot of other things, that moment's only going to happen once. And are you going to get it in still, or are you going to get it in a video?
Right.
That's what I was thinking, because I've tried to do that myself and thinking of different ways to approach it, even going so far as I got a GoPro and the little hot shoe tripod to try and do both at the same time, but you're still jack of both trades, but you're not getting the best of either.
Yeah, exactly. There was a like I've seen some photographers. What they'll do is they'll use their phone and like set up a mini tripod and lay it down. Like if it's a press conference, and that's doable. You could set it down, let it record or live stream, and then you can walk around and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
That works.
That's for a stationary subject.
Yeah, case by case basis. But what I tried to do, especially on the night of the shooting, I was mainly focused on stills, but I was taking short cell phone clips and tweeting them out, so people got a taste of the scene. And really, what else are you going to show them? A bunch of sirens and ambulances and people, the wounded people being wheeled in.
Right.
And that worked.
Just for the listeners, just to make sure they know what we're talking about. We're talking about the Las Vegas shootings, the massacre, where 59 people were killed.
And almost 500 injured.
Yeah, 500 injured. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about when we say night of the shooting. So, yeah.
So you were called in. How did that play out?
Yeah.
So I was normally I'm off on Sunday. I'd volunteered to work, and I was covering one of the preseason Vegas Golden Knights game, our new NHL team, which is at T-Mobile Arena, just about less than a mile or about a mile away from Mandalay Bay. But it was an early game, and I made it out of there by 9 o'clock. So I had just gotten home. I walked in the door, sat down, and then I got a call from my editor. Hey, there's an active shooter on the Strip. And I've covered a lot of breaking news. I've covered shootings on the Strip before, and there have been other active shooter situations. So I went back to my car, got ready, and I was immediately on the road, headed back. But I didn't really think much of it. And on the way, I'm trying to look on Twitter to see if there's any tweets or updates that have more details. And then I see it. Someone says there's shooting going on at a music festival. And that's when it's like, when you realize like how bad this could be.
Yeah.
And you're seeing this on the way there, like you're driving to the location.
So I go back, I park at New York, and I get there, I park at like 10:30, 10:33. So I think about the shooting started at like 10:05, 10:08. I was there about 15 minutes after the shooting stopped. On the other hand, we thought there were 3 shooters still active. And I thought it must have been some sort of coordinated terrorist attack, and I think that's probably what a lot of people were thinking because of all these reports. And the scene, I get out to the intersection at Trop and Las Vegas Boulevard, and it's not total chaos yet, but there's just ambulances coming in and out and just picking up people and leaving. And you see, like I saw someone being carried in on a wheelbarrow. I saw someone being carried like a body not moving in on a luggage cart, and that's when it was like, oh my god, this is like a war zone. It was just surreal.
Yeah.
And we all, living in Vegas, knowing we're a target, we expected it at some point, but really, like maybe when the bigger events were happening, or like New Year's Eve, there's always they shut down the Strip and there's so many people. So, and then we also had like the Mayweather McGregor fight. It seemed like all the biggest things were over with, and things were going to calm down and we're going to be good. And then it was the Route 91 Music Festival, which isn't really it's not like Coachella or something like that. It's about 22,000 people. Still a huge amount, but it's not like this big event that you would think be targeted.
Right.
But lo and behold, that's what it was.
Probably a time when security would be less lax than, say, New Year's, though.
Oh, completely. I mean, New Year's Eve, there's National Guard guys out, and there's even, there's a strong presence, and I think that made a difference. People didn't expect it. There really wasn't a strong law enforcement that, like, it was a normal weekend. It wasn't Labor Day weekend. It wasn't some big holiday thing. It was an average, maybe a little more than average Saturday or Sunday night crowd, but once it happened, I mean, the good thing is we do have a really good police department that's capable of handling this stuff, and they really did move on it really quick. But the problem was the information that there was only one shooter wasn't disseminated, so everyone thought it was still an active scene. 2 hours in, even after midnight, everyone still thought there were multiple shooters. And I did an interview, or myself and a reporter interviewed a EMS field coordinator who was in charge of a lot of the response. And he explained it perfectly. basically you have all these injured people fleeing the scene who have been shot, and when they get to the Luxor, when they get to the Tropicana, which are north of the Strip, north of the location of the festival, they're calling 911. They're saying, I got shot. So when a dispatcher gets the call, it's, oh, we have a shot person here. There must have been a shooting at this casino. And guess what? We heard about shootings at Paris, at Bellagio, all over the Strip.
Yeah.
And that's why, is because people were running, and it wasn't, the information wasn't disseminated like the way it should have been. But it was also chaos. Like, how can you blame them? But that, I didn't hear that until Thursday. I'm like, oh my God, it makes sense now. Like, now I realize. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have the bad information. You have panic, because I think that was the same day USC was also, there was also a false report at USC, and just kind of panic was setting in. Now, when you arrived directly on scene into the open grounds. How was your access?
I was actually more like outside of it a little bit. Yeah. Like a half mile away. I wasn't able to get that close. Yeah. So I got down to the Tropicana is actually directly north of the festival grounds, and I was outside of the front of that hotel. And so I saw like a stream of people at one point. This is maybe me being on the Strip about 15 minutes. Hundreds of people running for their lives outside along a pedestrian bridge, and I got a shot of it. And they just like panicked, and I think that's when they got calls about, there being a shooter, in New York. And so all the units, all the police officers are reporting it, and the security officers are telling people to run. And then just a couple minutes after that, I see, like 6 SWAT guys, guns drawn, running by me 15 feet away. And that's when I'm like, oh my God, this is really real.
Man.
Holy shit.
And you're in the middle of it all.
Yeah, and there were people taking cover in front of me, screaming, and like, still at the same time, you have more like bodies being wheeled over, and it's like, holy fuck, this is like a war zone. And it was around that point, I'd been on the Strip maybe half an hour, maybe more, when I saw people taking cover in a basement area of the Tropicana. And so I'm like, you know what? I just saw the SWAT guys. I'm like, I need to file some photos too. Let me go in here, take cover, get some photos in, and also like be out of the way of this chaos in case. I thought the shooters were coming my way. I mean, it felt like it, but really, in reality, the gunshots only lasted 10 minutes a bit earlier, but no one knew that.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, they thought there was even more than one, so.
Exactly. So I'm inside this little basement area, and I go through my stuff, tweet it out, send it in, and there are a lot of people, trying to make sense of it, people concerned about their friends and making calls, A lot of people got lost, or even some lost their phone. And then there were also wounded people being brought by too. I mean, there was blood in the hallways a little bit. There was a woman while I was editing. A woman was being carried by, and I pulled up. So for all this, I had my 1DX and a 400 on that, and then I have another. My other Canon backup is getting repaired. So I was shooting with my Leica, my M240. With a 28 millimeter. So I had a 28 and a 400 for the most part. My 7200 in the backpack. Just running around with all that. And but I was editing, and I saw this woman coming in. I didn't even have to move from my spot, and I snapped it. And that's probably the shot that's been circulated around most, because we send into AP a lot too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
so that's the one that got picked up with Time and CBS, and it's kind of like the headline shot.
Yeah, a lot of and then there was a shot of like later on of the officers patrolling through the convention center during lockdown. That was with a good few of the Leica shots. And, I was using my street instincts really, because you don't really want to be seen, especially in a situation like this. Not seen, but like, you want to be.
It brings a whole new definition to fading into the background.
Exactly.
Like,
I don't
there's
want
an active shooter possible,
Yeah, and I don't want to distress these people. I also don't want to get yelled at, but I know I have a job to do, and I need to document this, because these images are the ones that could really make a difference. Even if it's, I'm sure when there will be hearings about gun control, probably they'll show photos from that massacre. It might not be mine, but it'll be someone's.
Yeah.
Like David Becker, who was on the scene out of it.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference, and yeah, you just sort of, that kicks into gear, and adrenaline kicks into gear, and it's just
you kind of gotta disconnect yourself from the moment so you can actually work. I mean, I'm just trying to grasp how your mind would. Yeah, I guess it's one of those things you really wouldn't know how you would react until you're in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've covered so many shootings, but I've never been in that active of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole other world when it's on that level too, you know. It's not it's incomparable, really. And when other scenes happen like this, you know, I usually do follow it live. I'll follow it on Twitter and you know see what images are coming in, video is coming in. Like, you know, I'm used to digesting these scenes in real time. But when you're actually there during it all, it's surreal.
Wow.
But
you're still kind of working too, you know.
Yeah, and then so the aftermath. I mean, I was up that night. Well, I'll continue with it.
Yeah.
So basically, once I was in Tropicana, I filed my shots. I got some stuff out, and I was planning to go back outside. You know, I didn't really know what was happening, but I'm like, I didn't know what else I was going to get in there. But then I found out we were on lockdown and we didn't really have the option of going outside. So we got moved into we went through a lot of employee hallways and I got onto the casino floor. And, you know, just walking through the hallways is just lined with people, you know, trying to make sense of this and just relaxing or, you know, trying to waiting this out because we all didn't know what was happening. And at the time, it was still going on, I think, or it was just finishing up. But that wouldn't be dispatched to everyone until hours later. You know that there were no other shooters. So I got to the casino floor, and here I am standing with my Leica and then a 400 on the camera, sitting waiting. I wasn't really taking that many shots because I was hanging by the front door, and, you know, hoping, hey, maybe they'll let us out soon, which was a little naive to think. And then these security guys come up and they're like, you can't use this setup in here. You know, what's this? What are you doing? There's no photos allowed. And I'm like, I didn't even take a fucking picture with this camera, for one. Like, calm down. And two, yeah, it's private property, but also, like, I think the news of this event supersedes that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was like, I told them, I'm like, you know what? If you don't want me taking these pictures in here, kick me out. Put me out. I'll go out.
Yep. Let me outside.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I could tell, I could tell things were at least in control enough by the police, and I'm like, you know what? Just do that. And that didn't happen. They sort of just like, no, we're not going to do that.
They're kind of dealing with safety of the people. Do we keep them in, or dealing with this, you know, with the photographer laws and the private?
Yeah,
you know, they're running into that weird kind of little situation.
And it's just so stupid too, because like everyone in there is taking photos of this and has taken photos of this and is tweeting them out, like to single me out. Like, I get it, but literally there were 5 or 6 security guys talking to me, and I'm like, all surrounding me practically, and I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Wow.
So soon after that, they all the police are sort of they're doing sweeps of the casinos, and at the Tropicana, we all have to go get searched and then wait in like a convention area, like convention center room. So over there, luckily, you know, the security guards weren't around, and I got some photos of the people being searched, and then I got searched and went through, and I went down to the convention center area and started, you know, making some more photos and documenting the scene a little bit more. I didn't want to be too overly, you know, snapping around. Like, I really wanted to balance it, so I would walk around just with my Leica, because, you know,
a little bit more discreet.
Exactly, but I chose carefully. I don't think when I was down there 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't take more than maybe 50, 60 frames, maybe, if that.
Were they bringing victims in? Did they get locked down with you with EMTs, or were they taking people away?
In the beginning, there were EMTs coming by for the victims, but by the time we were in this room, it was almost everyone had been at the concert. There were some people with very, like, relatively minor wounds, like a woman near me had her head bandaged a little bit, like stuff like that. Like, there were people who had scrapes and like small wounds, but not people who were shot. They got those people out very quick.
Which that's to the point as well. I mean, it's not just the shooter. You also have kind of injuries by panic. People trampling others, getting knocked into fences.
And that's got to be a big part of it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people were feeling. I saw so many scraped knees and lost shoes, and, you know, that's what the panic does, and that's what happens. And it was just surreal, sort of taking that all in.
I mean, the injuries are also psychological too. I mean,
definitely. And I read that like I think it was like 28-30% of people will get like PTSD from a mass shooting. That's one in every 3, or almost. That's a lot. And at my paper, we've had grief counselors too, so I know I should probably stop by and at least check in.
Yeah.
But all considering, I'm doing pretty well, and hopefully that's, I don't know, because of the psychology background or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Chase, let me ask you, because I when you're in a situation like that, there are probably three aspects to it. One is self-preservation. I mean, when you're out there, you want to make sure you're not shot. So there's probably that self-preservation aspect. There's also the aspect where there's some compassion, where you see all these people around you hurt, and you want to help. You want to help. And then the third thing is you got to get the shot. And I'm sure when you're in that kind of situation, maybe if the adrenaline is really flowing, that self-preservation thing kind of slides back.
Yeah.
Is that making any kind of sense? When you're in that kind of situation?
I totally understand that. And watching like the movie War Photographer about James Noctway, how he handles that. It's always something you wonder when you're watching that. It's like, how would I even do in this situation?
Yeah.
But definitely in the beginning, adrenaline kicked in, and I was just sort of making sure I got the shot, because the upside is that all the wounded people were being everyone I did see was being assisted mostly by civilians, and that's the one upside. Like, it's a country festival, and there were a lot of off-duty people, a lot of people with veterans, and
right.
Those people made such a significant difference in this, and I think that's part of what made this scene maybe more unique too. So luckily, if anything, I didn't want to get in anyone's way, but I knew that by taking pictures, it wasn't quite like a lot of war or conflict scenes where you see where, if I don't take this picture, they might die.
Right.
So at least I didn't have that, but definitely the self-preservation part, that really came through when I saw hundreds of people fleeing out of New York, and then I saw a SWAT team go by me. And I took cover, and I was actually just going to try and like file from behind a bush. And then I saw people going into that basement area, and that's where I was like, you know what? Let me take cover a little bit. Let me get some images out from a safe place, and then I'll get back into it. But then, then I got stuck.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you were also maybe having connection issues with the amount of data that was being sent, maybe a slowdown, or even, I was worried that it would just be a complete shutdown of the system.
Yeah, well, normally I have like a MiFi unit around, but I somehow misplaced it, or it fell out of my bag, so I didn't have that.
I think the situation, that's a pretty good excuse.
Yeah, I know. But the upside is that most casinos have free Wi-Fi, so I was able to get onto the Tropicana Wi-Fi, and that kept me through. And I was able to get out images. I think I was stuck in there about 4 hours. I got out around 3:45, and probably got in there around 11:30. From beginning to end of me being in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is a while, but...
That is a long time. Were you talking to anybody, like any of the people that were outside, or...?
Yeah, there were some people right around me, just sort of where we're sitting in the convention center room, and there's actually this, like a beer hawker from the festival was there, and like right by me, and I'd actually... Like, I recognized him because I'd photographed him for a feature story of he sells a lot of beer for our minor league baseball team, the Las Vegas 51s. So I was like, of all how weird is that? That really shows Vegas is a small town.
Yeah,
very crazy mass shooting in this town of 2.5 million. Plus, you're on the strip with a bunch of tourists, and somehow I end up with a guy next to a guy I photographed before.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize it at first, but he started talking to me, and that's when I was like, hey, I recognize that voice. And then so.
Now, as a photojournalist, is it correct to assume that you're not just taking photos? Was any of these discussions, these interviews that you were doing in that 4 hours, is any of this stuff being published, or were you transitioning that information to your publisher?
We had, for the most part, we had a couple reporters on the scene in that area, not in the Tropicana, but we had someone by Mandalay Bay and Luxor. So for the most part, the reporting I was doing was for the most part tweeting out what was going on, like what came out over the intercom. And I did talk to some people, but I was mainly focused on shooting. So, and since we did have such a strong response from our newsroom, I wasn't worrying about reporting too much, because again, it's sort of like video, it's hard to keep up.
Just as an aside, and this tangents a little bit, but kind of more on the photojournalistic side as a career. You say you're tweeting things out, kind of from your position. Is that are you concerned about reuse or anything? Because I mean, there's the social media tool, something that you use consistently, and then you kind of get reciprocal acknowledgement or publishing from it.
Well, so that was something that would have concerned me a lot in the past, but the upside is that I was filing we're a newspaper member with AP, so I was filing directly to AP, and so luckily no one was. I did have editors, commenting on it. Hey, how can we get a hold of this, stuff like that, and I did respond a little bit. You could get in touch with my photo editors, or they're on the AP wire. You could go get them. But then like a photo editor from Agency France Presse, which is a big European wire, they have a smaller presence in the United States, but like they messaged me, and so I got in touch with them, and people were relatively good about facilitating that. They weren't really like I didn't come across anyone like downloading my images and sharing them without crediting me or anything like that. And then actually the New York Times had one of my tweets embedded in their story with my photos for a good like 12 hours.
Yeah.
So it's really surreal seeing those images like everywhere. I mean, even the photo of the woman being carried out, that was on the front page of CNN for a while.
Congratulations.
It's cool, but it's under such tragic circumstances.
Right, exactly,
That's the hard thing about trying to have pride in seeing your work in that way, but at the cost of the subject to which it's defining.
But you're communicating what is happening, and that you're disseminating information, and that's where the pride comes in, really.
So, and I kind of more to my point while ago, so you didn't have the fears of no publisher that was like, well, this particular image is too saturated. You have something else? Nothing like that, then.
Yeah, no, not really. And I mean, maybe you might wonder, whether like some maybe I might have had some photos that were a little too graphic. Might have picked the shot that was a little less, like the body that came in on a wheelbarrow. He was covered up, but then after that they laid him down on the ground, and at first he wasn't moving, and then they moved his body into the van, and this whole time I thought he was dead. And then a few days, because I didn't see any movement at all in my take, and then I went back and I do see him look up in a photo, and I'm like, oh, good, like that was really really heartwarming, because you're like, shit, here, I sent in this photo, but it stuff like that does weigh on you.
I know,
man.
I can imagine.
One more question on this, and I don't mean to spend so much time on it, but it is so very important. My question is how's it been since? I see here that you've been covering memorials and things, but how's the atmosphere in Vegas been since this situation has occurred? Do you see a sizable difference?
It's following all of the aftermath has really been incredible, just because of the level of community response. I mean, it's cliche, but it's so true. And Vegas is a place that a lot of the time doesn't feel very communal. It's not really much of a community, because so many people moved here from other states, myself included, and we have a lot of tourists on the Strip. Like, it's not... Normally, it doesn't really feel like it has that, at least in comparison to other places I've lived in. Mm-hmm. But through this, it's come together, the city has come together more than I ever thought it would or could, and it's a beautiful thing to see, like going to all these vigils. So yeah, starting, I was out until 7 a.m. on Monday. That's when I got home and finally got to sleep. Then I got to take the rest of the day off, and then I was back at it Tuesday. And I went around, stopped by some like makeshift memorial spaces, and they're heavy scenes, but it's really beautiful to see, people just stop by and take it in, and really, I don't know, it's heartwarming. And then later that night I did a vigil where we had a lot of local law enforcement and community leaders coming together, and there's a lot of like PR, fake kind of thing set up, but this is all really real, and it's a beautiful thing to capture, and that really makes up for all the horrible stuff, at least to some extent, that happened before. So that's what I was up to Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, I traveled around with our President Trump.
Yes, I saw these images.
Luckily, he did not say anything as ridiculous as he did in Puerto Rico the day before, because that was out there.
Yeah.
I think he figured he had enough fire going on to distract, so might as well be respectful on this.
But on the other hand, it's sort of cool to get to I meet up at Air Force One, photograph the arrival, and then I'm part of the motorcade with these other national photojournalists that flew out of DC with him, and that's I did a little bit of that during the campaigns, and I was lucky enough to photograph President Obama a few times, but I never got to be part of the presidential travel pool, and so this was the first time to get to do that. And even though it was unfortunate circumstances, it's a fascinating experience, getting to meet like Doug Mills, one of the New York Times photographers that covers the White House, stuff like that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And so it was a quick trip. Joined the motorcade, and then we went to UMC, which is the main hospital here in town. I mean, all of the hospitals were really overwhelmed by the amount of victims, but they're our only level 1 trauma center, and they do have a really good medical staff, and I'm sure their doctors really did make a difference. So we stopped by there, and Trump went to go visit with victims. We didn't get access to that, but we did get to photograph him walking out with some doctors, and he wasn't scheduled to speak a few words, but of course he did. And he walked up right in front of me and was literally, I had the perfect spot. He was 5-7 feet away, front and center, right in front of me, And then later, we went from there to the Las Vegas Metro Police Department headquarters, and he visited with first responders, did a small press conference, and also walked through the command center, and we got to photograph all of that as well. So it was pretty cool just to be in a very different working environment, but one with such talented photojournalists too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're kind of surrounded by very esteemed air.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. I mean, Evan Bucci is one of the DC AP photographers, and he'd actually a few days earlier sent me a message, you're doing really great work out there, and hope you're doing well, or something to that effect. It's really cool to see other photographers and photojournalists reaching out, but then running into him, just the next day.
Yeah. I mean, you feel validated at the same time you feel intimidated by that. You feel unworthy.
Yeah, it's definitely both. But it was sort of the level of output from people I knew, as well as a lot of photojournalists I didn't. There were at least several who sent me messages and hey, you're doing really great work, keep it up, or hope you're doing okay. Stuff to varying extent. On Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Right. It was really cool. And I really appreciated that, and it helps keep you going. So at the end of returning to Air Force One, we're getting out of the press vans, and Doug Mills, the New York Times photographer, turns around, hands me these this box of M&Ms, but they're the White House M&Ms with Trump's signature on them, which is just the weirdest thing. He's like, "Here, take this," and he's like,
"So
if
you
you're
got your swag."
Yeah, I mean. It's almost like a scene out of Almost Famous or something, and he's like, "Here, take this," and it's like, if you're ever in DC, get in touch. But it's just hilarious, of all things. What the fuck? So I have these White House M&Ms sitting around.
Yo, what a souvenir! What a souvenir!
Just going to pop in real quick to throw some love to our sponsor, Glass Key Photo. This is San Francisco's premier analog photography store and a staple for many photographers here in the Bay Area. If you're looking for analog gear, repairs, film, old or new, amazing zines by local artists, or simply want some great company and the opportunity for some fun photo walks, this is the place to be. You can find out more information and upcoming happenings by following them on Facebook or Twitter by searching Glass Key Photo, or visit their website at glasskeyphoto.com. Now, after 5 years in the colorful and historic Haight District, they have relocated closer to downtown. You can now find them at 1230 Sutter Street. That's between Polk Street and Van Ness. It's a fantastic new venue offering a ton of space, breath of fresh air, I'm sure, for not only Gordon and Matt down there, but all photographers here in the Bay Area. Above all, while in San Francisco, be sure to visit Glass Key Photo and give a big hello from all of us here at StreetPX.
Hey, you know what? We need to touch on some other topics too.
Yes,
because you covered the Oregon standoff.
So yeah, those the Bundys who how do I even describe it all? They've had land rights issues with the Bureau of Land Management, especially. And so originally in 2014 there was a standoff just outside of Nevada, and although I was working with the paper at the time, the more like senior people were busy photographing that, and so I didn't really see any of that action. Mm-hmm. But then in the beginning of 2016, the very like early January, some of the Bundy sons came into Oregon, and they basically took over a national wildlife refuge, which is federal property, and they basically like had people there for the next 45 days. And so because of their connection to Las Vegas and Nevada, and we just recently been bought by Adelson, they sent me and a reporter out within like the first day they were there. We flew out to Boise, Idaho, and drove 3 hours to this middle of nowhere Oregon town, freezing cold too. I wasn't expecting like 20 degrees.
Oh yeah, you're coming from Vegas, especially being a Californian.
What a shock!
And this is, I had no idea really what was going to happen. We just sort of went into it. We'll see what happens. And it's this Oregon town called Burns, maybe 3,000 people, but the whole county itself is the population's 9,000, and the county is bigger than 6 U.S. states. So it's almost like this like tale of the Old West, but in modern days, because you have these like armed militants taking over federal property, and how do you approach this? What's going to happen? And the funny thing, the night before, I was actually at a concert. I was seeing Morrissey, and I got a text from my boss at like 11 p.m. Hey, can you go to Oregon? And I didn't even know what the hell had happened. And I Googled it. I was like, holy shit, like they took over that afternoon. And then I was at the airport at 6 a.m. the next day. And I was there for 7 days the first time.
Wow. How was your room and board, your accommodations? Were you staying with friends, hotel, Airbnb? How's it played out?
We were able to find a motel and just sort of extend it like day by day. Luckily, because the town filled up with law enforcement, and you had all the national media. I mean, there were BBC was there with the satellite truck. There were 100 people. And I think this was the first time that I was ever involved in such a big national story, and it was the first time I was shooting alongside another like 2 dozen photographers, trying to get the scene. And so that was really surreal for me, not to mention the whole like story of it all. But it was interesting. Basically, we were able to like go visit the wildlife refuge. The Bundy people would do a press conference with us every day. It's just all sort of formed naturally somehow. And then they'd let us down into the refuge and walk around for like an hour or two.
Right behind the walls, like when this is where everything's going down?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of just like like where you see residential housing at national parks. It's like a small version of that. I mean, there's maybe a dozen buildings down there for like equipment, for offices and stuff. And we didn't get to go in most of them, but we got to walk around among the area because the militants were surprisingly accommodating, but they wanted to get their own message out that, hey, we're not threatening anyone. And, for the most part, they kept their guns hidden, but they weren't really standoffish with us, which helped with access.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was my big question. Yeah.
Document that, and then also back in the town, 30 miles away, the town was split in two. Some people supported them. Some people were like, the BLM does treat us bad. It's not fair. We need to do something about this. But a lot of the residents, the other half is, hey, we need to support our law enforcement. We need to support the county sheriff because these guys have, from not in town, they came from out of nowhere and just took over, like, this beautiful wildlife sanctuary we have.
Yeah. And then the subsequent media attention and everybody just descending on the area to destroy it.
So there were like community meetings where over 500 people showed up, and that's like, not quite half the town, but it's close to it.
School gymnasium, kind of where they usually do, like...
Yeah, they had like a county fairgrounds, or in this big empty like barn looking place.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to hear different people have their different sides to it.
Yeah.
Like there was every single viewpoint, and it was fascinating to witness it. It really is. And after it was all, a favorite shot I had was people like just coming up to the county sheriff and like hugging him or like holding his hand, and these really deep moments. And it's just really interesting to capture that. And also like just the different areas, you have that going on. You have the law enforcement response, and you have the militants themselves as well. And so I was down there 7 days, and then they finally had us come back, and then I think it was maybe 2 weeks later that Lavoy Finicum was shot in this, standoff where the FBI finally moved in.
Yeah.
Because, we were all wondering, all the journalists, when is the law enforcement going to do anything? They waited a long time, and I definitely understand why. But on the other hand, it's sort of, there is such a problem when you see the way they respond to something like Ferguson, and they just come in and crack down on everyone, and and then with this they don't even. I mean, you have these armed white guys, and they're not doing anything. It's interesting to see these issues up close.
Mm-hmm.
So what they finally did is they set up like a sting and tried to they set up a blockade to block a couple like this little convoy of the militants who had gone. They were going to another county to speak, I think, or speak to the sheriff or something like that. And they moved in, and one of the guys, Lavoy Finicum, got out of the car, and he staggered or walked towards police officers. And the video evidence they did show us, it appeared that he was reaching for his jacket, probably where his gun was, and then he was shot and killed. So then they sent us back for a second time, and to photograph a little bit more of the aftermath. And
how was the atmosphere when you arrived the second time compared to the first?
It was... There started to come into town more people who were in support of the movement, like other militia groups and stuff, and they weren't happy about it. But they also weren't the same people that were there before, and they weren't the residents of the town.
Right.
So you had that voice was sort of growing, but it wasn't the town's voice, I guess. And then on the other hand, there was a lot more law enforcement. Like there was a FBI blockade set up 5 miles from the refuge. So every day the first 2 days we're just sort of sitting out there photographing it in the distance. And then I remember one time we were driving back to the town, it's 20, 30 miles. And I see a convoy of literally like 30 plus like dark SUVs followed by like 3 armored trucks at the end. I'm like, oh shit, something's going down.
Ooh.
So then we turned around and followed them back, and they ended up moving in closer. And by the time all this is happening, I think there are only 5 or 10 people left inside the refuge. And we ended up staying a couple more days, and it still didn't end. So we went back home, and I think finally after like another week or two, the final like 3 people left.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of it. But there was still, photographing the aftermath in Nevada. I actually went up to Bundy Ranch once, and myself and a reporter met with Carol Bundy, wife of Cliven Bundy, sort of Bundy patriarch, and you follow the roots, in a way. And that's the same thing that happened here with the Vegas shooting. You follow the different memorials and stuff that happen and the way people respond.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But out of the Oregon standoff, I got an honorable mention in the domestic news picture story category in the National Press Photographer's Best of Photojournalism.
Good.
And so that was a huge honor to just see that work get recognized, and something that I spent so much time on, but also something that I was shooting alongside another couple dozen photographers. It's like, shit, I think I can do this.
Yep, you got it, man.
Did that help a lot as far as like getting more work? Did you find that they were giving you more assignments and stuff after you kind of got that achievement?
I mean, a little bit. maybe not as much as you'd want, but
more a personal thing. Then it's like, I got this, but keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, at the time, our photo staff is actually pretty young, and I've been shooting longer than anyone else there now, other than our director of photography, for shooting stills.
So you're the old man on this.
I know, I'm 26, but I've been shooting there, 5-6 years now.
Ooh, we got a weird industry.
Capacities. Yeah.
The old grizzled veteran, 26, man.
It feels like it sometimes, after this week at least.
Oh, man.
Definitely aging through the fire. I mean, the imagery, but here's the thing, the imagery, though, that you're pulling out of this and the abilities you've pulled out of this is amazing. It's beautiful, beautiful work.
Yeah, thank you. And a lot of it, too, like for the Oregon stuff, you only get to submit 12 photos for it out of, thousands that I've taken. And literally, I probably filed between the 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks I was there, I probably filed, up to 200 photos, maybe even more, averaging probably 20, 30, 40 a day to varying degree.
How did you choose the imagery? Like, how did you cut your process maybe, or come to choosing the particular images for the essay?
So, honestly, a lot of it, the biggest person that helped me was John Loker. He's the Associated Press photographer in town here, but he used to work at the paper at the Review Journal, and he was there for over 10 years. And when I was freelancing and interning early on, he was there. And he joined the AP maybe 2015, I think, maybe 2014, either or. But he has such a great eye, and even though he's not an editor, he's really was insightful in how to help me go through these images, choose them, and then sequence them, because that's just as important as well.
That's right.
And we just sat down for like 2-3 hours at a restaurant down the street in downtown Vegas and went over it all. And so that helped me more than anything. Really learning from people who have a sharpened eye, who know what it's like to see. Like, it makes a difference.
That is so important. So important. Man.
Yeah, and for this, I'll have to do the same, definitely.
Yeah.
And just having another set of eyes, it's really important to get that, and even more so when it's like a picture story.
Mm-hmm. I was going to pivot off to another thing you want to talk about is Burning Man.
Oh yes, forgot.
Yeah, we can't forget that, man. We don't want to run out of time here before we talk about that.
So, the RJ had never gone out to Burning Man before. It's this, you guys are from the Bay Area, and I'm sure all the Bay Area listeners know, but it's this, crazy festival that happens up in the way northern reaches of Nevada. It's 3 hours north of Reno, and it's about a 10-11 hour drive from Vegas, 500 miles north. It's a lot closer to San Francisco, really, than anything else.
Yeah, you ought to see Oakland on the ramp up. Like, you can go down through Oakland, it's just a whole bunch of, like, dragon machines and all kinds of shit going on in the loft areas.
And basically, it's these, 60,000, 70,000 people set up their own little society, their own little city called Black Rock City in the middle of the desert. And nothing is sold. Everyone brings their own food. You either camp, you take an RV. And I'd always seen images and wanted to just go and experience it, if not photograph it. And then luckily with the ownership and having a bit of a budget, they let us rent an RV, and myself and a reporter went out and we went to go cover it. And the whole event itself is 10 days. We weren't there the whole time, but in total the trip was 7 days, and I think we spent 6 nights there, so the good portion of it. And we had to get set up, with credentials and whatnot. And I had to learn how to work an RV.
Get that,
which
that
wasn't
C-level,
that bad.
that C-class license.
They luckily didn't need that, but there was a little bit of a learning curve. And, just a lot of it was preparation, really. Getting supplies, getting food, getting, a lot of the reason we needed it is because it had a generator. And, how else are you going to file stories daily and get shit out? You need power. So we brought, maybe 20 gallons extra of gas for the generator, because that's what it runs off of. Brought a lot of extra water.
Yeah, is there like open Wi-Fi, Burning Man Wi-Fi center?
Well, we were lucky enough to have someone at the camp we're at set up a Wi-Fi access, but it was really, really slow. And so we had a Verizon MiFi unit, But during the day, it was so clogged up that I got maybe 3 pictures out in an hour, just sitting there, trying to get something in for the paper so they could be like, hey, we could run this tomorrow. So that was a pain in the ass. And what I ended up doing to get my full take-in is wait until 1 or 2 a.m. when people stopped using all the cell towers. And that's finally when, you could get in 20 photos in like 10 minutes or something like that. So I had to wait up like at least maybe 3 of the nights just to get in more images. But of course, my phone is AT&T, and it turns out law enforcement uses AT&T, and so they brought out extra AT&T towers, but I didn't have a hotspot set up on my phone, so I was like, now I know, but
wow,
could have gotten it out easier, but yeah.
Well, speaking of equipment, I'm very curious here. Equipment upkeep, dealing with that dust, and I'm not sure. Did you have another camera in repair and only stuck with the one, or how are you doing?
At that time, I had a 1DX, a 1D Mark IV. Those are my 2 main bodies. And I brought my Leica, though I got there and they're like, nope, not taking it out. So that stayed, yeah.
Probably smart.
Yeah, that was a quick decision.
Yeah.
But I did have like one of these like weatherproofing setups and stuff, which I use. I didn't use it all the time. I used it sometimes. But I typically use the 1D Mark IV because that's a camera that came out in 2009. It's my backup and it's beat up. Sadly, they haven't replaced it. It's good, yeah. But at the same time, like, we're owned by a billionaire. Can I have a camera that's not 9 years old?
Right. Help me out here.
Sheldon, come on,
so
man.
I was like, well, let's just use this. But, these cameras, the 1D bodies are made to handle a lot of shit. And it definitely got dirty and a little bit of dust on the sensor. But for the most part, all these horror stories I've read, I didn't encounter. And it's been working fine since. Like, I've got them both cleaned a little bit since then. But
good.
Were you there the year that the insect the bug issue happened? Okay, I think it might have been
no, but that
last
sounds
year.
Scary. Oh God.
Yeah, it looked like a fucking like the locust plague, except it was some other type of like insect that just bombarded all the people and made
That's
it
terrifying.
miserable for a couple of days.
No, there were a lot of dust storms, but we didn't get any rain. But you'll get these storms and you can literally only see. It's called a whiteout. You can only see 5 feet in front of you. I mean, I got lost out in the playa, like riding around your bike, and you'll see things in the distance, and then the dust storm comes through, and you're stranded, and you just have to wait. Luckily, one of those times, I ran into a guy with an ice cold cart of PBR and water, and I just hung out with him a while. And waited it out.
Smart man.
And
oh my God.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad.
I'm just having this image of on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where the Hunter S. Thompson character is trying to cover the motorcycle race in Vegas.
Yeah, the Mint 400.
Right.
Yeah,
and then towards the end, he's got his beer mug and he just dumps it out. And it's just fucking muddy sand.
Yep. Pretty similar. Yeah, I'm definitely a Hunter S. Thompson fan, just especially because of all the Vegas stuff and this bizarre approach to everything. And you always wonder what he'd think of something like Burning Man, or they have EDC down here, like all this. It's interesting.
Yeah, now, Chase, you're a pretty multifaceted photographer. Tell us what other things that you do besides photojournalism and street.
Well, living in Vegas, I work a 1 to 10 shift. I do a lot of sports as well, and getting to cover the mega fights, the Mayweather McGregor recently, that was pretty surreal and
I
and
can
fun.
imagine. I saw those images, man.
It's media madness, man. It's crazy.
What a circus that must have been, man.
And I was also around for Mayweather Pacquiao too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a side I would have loved to have seen. I was a big Pacquiao. See, I grew up as people may laugh at this, but I grew up as a fan of Prince Nassim Ahmed, like in the late '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And he was just an oddball boxer.
A lot of them are, and that's sort of it's like out of a movie. Really, you have these like huge egos, especially Mayweather and McGregor too, and we get to go like a couple weeks before the fight. We go to their training gyms and we photograph them warming up and working out and talking with the media. And at McGregor's and at Mayweather's, they both sort of will just walk around like, oh, which bag do I punch next? And it's the seas part for them, you know. It's just this massive swarm, and it's just crazy. There's 100 people trying to get one photo, and you're right there in the thick of it. It's just,
how are
it's
you
bizarre.
approaching? Are you just elbowing your way in and just get this as good a position as you can, or
it's a lot of that. It's trying to guess where they're going to go next, and it's seeing where they're going to go, moving quick. So like when McGregor first got to his workout, and this is at the new UFC headquarters, which is really fancy digs, and I see him walk up, and I see someone setting up a chair maybe 20 feet in the distance, and it's like, oh, you know, he's probably going to go get his hands wrapped. So I bust my ass and get ahead of everyone, and it's me and a couple other photographers right front and center, right as he sits down. And immediately there's a swarm of maybe 50 people around us in a giant circle. And, you know, it's me, John Loker, you know, McGregor's own photographer right there, inches away, you know, like I'm sticking my lens like an inch from his hand getting wrapped for a cool angle, because we're that close, you know, you might as well take advantage of it.
Yeah.
hell yeah.
I remember that shot.
It's sort of doing all this stuff, you sort of know where to go at the right time, and you at least try, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Trying to use that experience, you know,
Yeah.
run to a bag and just use willpower. It's like, come my way. Come
Yeah,
my
and then
way.
for the arrivals, which happened the Monday or Tuesday of fight week, the fight being on Saturday, and I decided they put me and another photographer on it, so I was like, hey, you know, I could play around a little bit, and I decided to use some off-camera flash, which is something I don't really do a whole lot, but I've wanted to. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in this media craziness, I don't have a cord, I have like a sync trigger on it, so I have a camera in one hand, and I'm just like leaning my arm out with the flash, and I got this one awesome shot of McGregor walking up, and the flash hit him perfectly, and you just have these security guys in suits around it. And, you know, that was one of my favorite shots that week, and that was really cool to make that image and play around with that stuff. You know, it adds like a cinematic quality almost to it.
Uh-huh.
It really does. And that image is fantastic. If you're okay with it, I want to put that into the show notes so all of our listeners can go and check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing.
That was one of my favorite that week.
Did you get to kind of like feel their type of attitude, that ego between the two of them, or was there any type of tension? Did they get near one another and start mouthing off?
Most of that, when they did a media tour, and that was when there was really high tension, but it sort of calmed down after that. They're a lot more focused and sort of just walking around and taking it all in, you know. So yeah, by then they were just, you know, ready to fight, and you're just trying to capture what you can of them in the zone, and while we get close access before, you know, it's fight day. So yeah.
Did you notice, like, being kind of behind that firewall, so to speak, and getting to see it from the backstage? Did it that kind of tension feel like more of a PR stunt, or were they both just like?
I think they both feed off of it. They both feed on this massive media hype. I mean, both of them really, especially McGregor though. I mean, you could tell he loves it. He loves that spotlight, and if anything, he just reacts even more because of it. And it's again, it's like out of the movies, you know. You can't write these characters up.
No, it's a photographer's dream, man.
Yeah, it is.
He gives me this feeling of like, you know, a pro wrestling heel. You know, somebody that just plays the part, runs that character because that's what builds the audience. Yeah,
well, And you ever wonder, like, you know, will we see whatever is behind that mask? But at least when they're in front of all this, it doesn't change for even a second.
Right. Which even afterward, you did see kind of the mask come down a little bit because, you know, obviously McGregor, he earned his respect.
Yeah.
You know, you can be opinionated all you want, but.
Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting to hear them post-fight, you know, guard a little down and, you know, hear the respect they have for each other. So that was good. And it's sort of. It's cool to see.
With your experience shooting the boxing scene through the years here and seeing that type of a severe transition away from what normal boxing media circuses can be, how do you feel about how that sport's going in this way? Yeah, does it seem like it's more going kind of insane entertainment, or is there still...
You know, I wish... I sort of missed a lot of the the good action of the boxing days, and sort of like I caught the end of Mayweather's career, but it you know, and then being around for like Mayweather Pacquiao, they make it like it's the be all end all, but really that was the most boring fight I've ever shot, and that's a little disappointing, especially when we do shoot UFC. I think UFC, at least as a photographer, is more exciting to photograph. But when you do get a great boxing match, like I got to shoot the Canelo Golovkin fight. I got to shoot that, and that was just a couple weeks after the Mayweather-McGregor one. That was definitely a lot better. But then you had the, judges mess it all up. So it's like, is anything going to go right in boxing?
Yeah.
It's hanging in there, but it's definitely doesn't seem like the glory days.
Well, it seems like it's hanging in there due to Scandal, and everybody loves Scandal.
Yeah. It is fun to still shoot, but UFC is pretty wild. But on the other hand, you literally have to shoot through a cage, and that it's a lot more challenging than having to shoot between ropes,
Right.
Do you prefer the UFC fights, covering those over boxing matches?
I think I have more striking images from the UFC fights. But also because they're so brutal, it almost makes it a little easier too, maybe. Like it's tougher to shoot boxing, and it's tougher to get a great shot out of boxing than it is UFC.
Boxing's a bit more redundant.
Yeah, definitely. And those connections are so fast, and just being in the right way to have both faces in view, or and then the right. I mean, these cameras shoot 12, 14 photos a second, and they hit so fast. You might have a few connections out of 2,000-3,000 frames. Maybe a dozen connections of where where there's actual
the cheek impression and everything,
like
face contortion, with the impact, the
sweat.
It's tough to get those images. It really is.
You forget how fast these boxers are at the top of their careers and talent. Like, you can go to a local boxing match and they're fast, but these guys are a whole different level.
It's insane. It really is. And so part of the problem is you don't have really big, great heavyweight fighters, which are probably some of the best to watch and best to photograph.
The years of Holyfield and Lennox Lewis and all that really hasn't been
gone. Right. Yeah, or at least for now.
Yeah, it'll come back, I'm sure, but it's called like a rebuilding stage.
Yeah, it'll take some time.
So I'm going to go ahead and throw it to Jim. Above all, this has been an absolutely amazing talk, and I know you're kind of pressed for time. You got things to do, so I'm going to go ahead and throw it to Jim and let him toss us the final question that we ask all of our listeners. Well, Jim, go for it.
Yeah, just really quick, Chase. If you had your choice of shooting at any time period within the inception of the camera, in any place in the world, where would it be? What would you shoot and why?
So I did some thinking about it, and I think I'd have to start off in like the mid-late 50s, because early United States, like Americana, and like you have Robert Frank's The Americans, and you have Bruce Davidson's Brooklyn Gang, and getting to capture that stuff when cameras were so unfamiliar to people, when they didn't react to it and they just let you be around. I mean, some of my favorite imagery, because it's fascinating. It's such a fascinating time period. But I'm also a big fan of the 60s and 70s, too, and getting to capture the way culture changed, especially with like a small portable camera, with Leicas and whatnot, another 35 millimeters.
Would there be a particular location during these eras that you would want to be?
A few. I mean, I'd want to see like early, like New York City in the 50s and 60s, and then Las Vegas, especially like these early neon. It's like the Wild West, but it's so different. And getting
the old strip.
I mean, I lived for a year. I lived just a couple blocks from Fremont, right by the El Cortez, which is like one of the oldest casinos there is, and that used to be my backyard.
El Cortez, I stayed there one time.
and those old neon images, Vegas in the 50s and 60s. It's fascinating, and it would just be amazing to shoot around that and capture that and just see it,
Oh, man. I stayed at the El Cortez last year, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, man. And that was a throwback. Wow.
Yeah.
That was a throwback.
It's too bad. So they have the Fremont Street Experience, and they have the sort of ridiculous LED screen that covers it all.
Yeah.
And they've had that since 1995, but you don't see the rest of the neon in the buildings, and it sort of looks like a cheap touristy thing now, which it's not the same. But the further east you go, like the El Cortez and the other stuff, that's when you get outside of that little LED screen. So that's the better area, really.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, because that is even today. You go to the old Strip.
Mm-hmm. And they Vegas just tears everything down, but there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. More than anywhere else, at least.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. Actually, I do want to ask one more question before I let you go. And just for our listeners out there, especially to our aspiring photojournalists that are listening in, do you have any tips or any advice that you want to share?
Well, just the biggest thing, is keep on shooting and shoot as much as you can. And really just like, the more you shoot, the more you'll learn. You'll hopefully learn by going online and just reading what you can. Like you don't need to take a class. I didn't take a single photography class. You could teach yourself everything, and that's such a fascinating tool. But even more so, get input from other people, get input from your peers and from other photographers, and just so you help evaluate your own work, and then evaluate theirs too, and evaluate all the imagery you do see. Every day you see billboards, you see so much, and the more you study it all the imagery you see, photography and otherwise, the more you can grow from that and learn from that. So, yeah, but more than anything, get out and shoot.
Good advice.
Get out and shoot.
Good advice. Well, thank you for coming on the show. And secondly, this goes without saying, but we're very glad that you're okay, especially going through what you did.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you guys having me, and thank you.
Our pleasure.
Cool. All right. Well, Chase, go ahead and let our listeners know where can they find more about you and your photography online.
My website is csstevensphotography.com, and you could check out some of my work there. But the best place really is probably my Instagram or my Twitter. And my Instagram is it's at CCHHAASSEE. So basically my name, but 2 of every letter. And that's where I post a lot of my street stuff and some of my favorite images from work too. And then you can find me at my Twitter it's CS Stevens Photo. And of course, reviewjournal.com.
There we go.
Myself and all of our other photographers.
Give a little love to the employer, right?
Yeah, don't want to forget that.
Cool. Well, Jim, where can we find out more information about you?
As always, JimWatkinsPhoto.com, where all the links to my social media platforms are right there.
Good deal. And you can find out more about me at recasper.com, all of my blog posts, all of my workshops. Furthermore, go and take a look at StreetPX.com. That's where you're going to find all of our previous episodes. There's also a link to our merchandise store where we have about 30 we got 30 camera designs, 15 new ones that was recently just released. So everything that you give back through there or through our Patreon, patreon.com/StreetPX. All that money goes right back into keeping the mics hot, bandwidth flowing, and all of these wonderful guests like Chase Stevens that came in today coming into our studio. So definitely help us if you can. And also go to iTunes. If you don't want to give any money, you can give us a review or give us some stars. That helps us get into more ears out there. So above all, thank you all for listening. Chase, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chase.
Thanks, Jim, for joining me. And we will see everybody in 2 weeks. Cheers.
All right, bye.